There's a huge misconception in the public that some drugs are legal and other drugs are illegal because of their pharmacology, because of what happens with biology. That's a myth and it's not true. So drugs are not illegal or legal based on pharmacology alone. In fact, pharmacology has little to do with it. I'll just give you an example in the United States. Tobacco versus marijuana. The tobacco industry was a powerful lobby. They had a powerful lobby and they were a part of government. So their product became exempt from any kind of law, any regulation. And their product was legal. And marijuana, on the other hand, did not have a lobby. And marijuana was also associated, the use of marijuana was associated with groups that the majority of Americans didn't like. Mexicans, Black Americans. That's how marijuana became illegal in the United States, and that's how tobacco became legal. So it doesn't have much to do with pharmacology. And the same sort of history can be traced to something like cocaine, heroin, but I won't bore you with the details of that, but just understand the most important thing is drugs are not legal or illegal based on pharmacology alone. Some drugs are prohibited largely because they are associated, their use is associated with groups we don't like. And so we can't say we don't like these people, so let's go after these people. But we can say we can make drugs, a specific drug, illegal, and then we can arrest those people. Not because we don't like them, but because they're using those drugs that we have banned. In this country, or when I come or I hear other people talking, we talk about drug trafficking. And the focus is mostly on low-level drug dealers, people who are not making much money, and they are in the game of chess, they are the pawns. They're not the people who are running the game. But that's who gets all of our attention. And then that allows us not to focus on the people who the attention should be given. And so when we think about those people, if we're only focusing on the drug dealers, it also pretends that the problem is drugs, or the problems are drugs, or is drugs exclusively. And so it misplaces the focus. So whenever we're talking about these issues that face Brazil, and you're talking about drugs or drug dealers, and you're not talking about 70% of the population who does not have a middle school education, and then I don't want to talk to you because you are either stupid or disingenuous. In my book, I argued that we should decriminalize all drugs. Decriminalization is treating drug possession like a traffic violation. You might receive a fine or you may have a warning, but you don't go to jail. There are no criminal sanctions. So that's decriminalization for all drugs. That's what I argued for in my book. And that happens in places like the Czech Republic, Spain, Portugal, and other places around the globe. But we should understand that there are some limits to decriminalization. The limits to decriminalization that it does not deal with the most serious issues related to drugs that I care about, and that is the safety of the drug user. So drugs sometimes have impurities, adulterants, when you buy them on the streets. Decriminalization does not deal with that. And so the user may be taking something that they think is cocaine, but it is cut or adulterated with something that might be more harmful. And so, in order to deal with the impurity or the harm to the user, the government has to regulate, just like it regulates alcohol, to make sure when we drink alcohol there are no impurities. The same should be done with these other drugs. And that way the user will be safe. The user doesn't have to worry about their health in terms of the impurities. That's one of the benefits of governmental regulation of drugs. Another benefit of government regulation would be it takes the profit out of the black market, so the trafficking. In the United States, we have done this with marijuana in 8 of our states, where we now have marijuana be legally regulated by the government in Colorado, Washington, Alaska, Oregon, California, Nevada, Maine, and Massachusetts. So these states all have legal regulation. We don't have to worry about impurities in the cannabis in those states. We don't have to worry about the profits in illegal trafficking in those states related to that drug. And we can do the same thing for other drugs. And so as we think about Brazil, it certainly can be done here in Brazil, but you need to get more support, and you need to have more people talking about this issue. First thing that we all must do is we must stop calling places in Brazil cracolândia. It's such, I can't even find a word. The only word I can think of to describe it is words that I don't believe in, like evil and wicked. You guys, it's like those religious terms, those terms that I don't use. But it's a way, when we use the term cracolândia, it allows us not to think about why people are really in those spaces. Those people are there because they are poor, not because they use crack or any other drugs. They are there because they are mentally ill. They have psychiatric problems that haven't been treated. And they are there in places like Brazil because they are black, and the racism and those sorts of things. So when you use the term cracolândia, what you're doing is that you're participating in the subjugation of those people that you say you care about. So whenever you use that term, think about the term, like in the United States, we use the term nigger. We don't allow people to use that term nigger because what it does. We are now asking or preventing people from using terms like bitch to describe women. The same is true with cracolândia. When you all use that term, it allows political officials to avoid dealing with the real issues. This has nothing to do with crack. Those places have nothing to do with crack. People may use crack. Yes, some of the people may use crack, but they're there because of poverty, mental illness, and race. So change the term. Now, how I felt going to that place. I've been there before a few times. The overwhelming sort of thought that I feel is anger. I mean, of course, I used to feel sad too, but the sadness is overshadowed by the anger. It's overshadowed by the anger, and the anger is not even really towards the police, although, you know, the police have their role, but it's mainly towards the ruling class in this country and your politicians. That's where the anger is really aimed at, because they allow this sort of thing to happen and they continue to avoid dealing with the issue. So I'm angry. That's what I feel. And as I think about the thing that has changed since I first visited that place to now, the major thing that has changed for me was the smell. The smell was really pungent. It was unbearable in some cases, in part because people have to use the toilet outside, whereas previously there was some housing and people could go indoors and use the toilet. And so you have people in that space that has to use the bathroom outside, and so it smells. And the housing dealt with that previously to some extent. So those are sort of some of the initial thoughts that I had today, walking around that space.